Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the portals of International Institute of Jammu and Kashmir Studies and Analysis. I extend a very heartily welcome to all our guests, speakers, panelists, and observers to this webinar Statehood for Jammu, Reality or Myth. ITSA is a brainchild of Brigadier Dr. Vijay Sagar Dhiman, who convened this platform for independent and impartial academic research on the issues of plaguing the state of Jammu and Kashmir ever since its formation in 1841 in the entirety. There has been sea of controversies around the political unit. Every player or stakeholder has tried to convey the facts as per its agenda. As a result, the truth never come out and the citizens of this beautiful state are still suffering whether they belong to Jammu and Kashmir or to Ladakh. In search of true people's voices, today we are here to discuss the demand of statehood for Jammu from Jammu division of J&K. So for the moderation of discussion, I would now like to hand it over to Brigadier Dr. Vijay Sagar Dhiman.
Thank you, Varam. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to the portals of International Institute of J&K Studies and Analysis, that is ITSA, today evening for a webinar that is Statehood for Jammu, a myth or a reality. So we will be discussing this particular issue. We have some esteemed panel over here. The speakers, Mr. Ankur Sharma could not come for medical reasons. There's some medical emergency. And we have Dr. Ajay Charangu, who was a chairman Panoon Kashmir, based in Jammu for a long time. Then we also have Mr. Jagmohan Sharma, an intellectual common man who has served in Jammu and served pan-India and has a perspective of the pulse of Jammu in a very, very thorough manner. Then we also have Colonel Satish Lalhotra. Then we have Dr. Ajay Charangu, who was a chairman Panoon Kashmir, based in Jammu for a long time.
The entire constitution building process of Jammu and Kashmir was allowed to be dominated by the National Conference, which was primarily a Muslim party. Hindus recognized it like that, Buddhists recognized it like that, and there was, in Kashmir, particularly the Hindus of Kashmir recognized it as a communal party. It was just in name secular. For a brief period, till the accession took place, for a brief period, for tactical reasons, a secular posture was sustained by National Conference, and subsequently, the entire governance over the years, decades, was establishment of Muslim precedent, consolidation of it, and then erosion of both the politics, power, as well as the demographics of Jammu and Ladakh. This type of a process continued all these years. In 1990, this Muslim state of Jammu and Kashmir eventually witnessed the upsurge of radical Islamic terrorism, which dislodged or unleashed genocide on the Hindu minority living in Kashmir. Hindus of Kashmir were subjected to a genocide. A thorough religious cleansing was accomplished. And the state of India described this whole happening as a simple migration. There was more or less a consensus across the strategic fraternity as well as the political class to underplay the ideological underpinnings of the separatist movement in Kashmir. In fact, to secularize it in the national discourse, concocting reasons for it and then trying to somehow continue this contract which was hammered with National Conference or the Muslim leadership of Kashmir over there, continue it as a national imperative, continue it as a strategic imperative. That process started getting unfolded immediately after 90, when the Hindus were pushed out. Now, having said this thing, in this whole process, the population of Jammu, the population of Ladakh, and the population of Kashmir, they were interlocked in a political process, which had to be essentially a process which consolidated Muslim precedent. Now in this process, the erosion of not only the secular nation building, the basic political power of Jammu and Ladakh started happening. So if broadly we talk about the population percentages, the Hindus of Jammu and Kashmir constituted at one time almost the 42% of the population of the state. Hindus and say other non-Muslims. In Jammu, it was 60-40 ratio in favor of the Hindus. In Kashmir, it was almost 94% population, which was Muslim. Now, not only the separate constitution of J&K state, which guaranteed, which ultimately created a structure, a constitutional structure, and ultimately a governance, which essentially had to be a governance for Muslim presidents in the state. Not only was this done, what happened simultaneously in the state over the years was that the demographic expansion of Muslim population started happening both into Ladakh as well as into Jammu. And the demographic cleansing of Hindus in Kashmir had already been accomplished. 2000, from 1981, the census, the operations which took place, 1991 and census could not happen in J&K state because the situation was very bad. In 2001, also the situation was very bad. From 2001 to 2011, the 2001 census and the 2011 census, these census operations happened at a time when Muslim separatist forces had thoroughly entrenched into the political process. And there were apprehensions being raised by the political leaders. In 2001, the top political leadership of Jammu, they did try to broach this subject with the then Home Minister of India, L.K. Advani, that the situation, either there should be mixed teams for the census operations, or the census operations should be postponed because the administrative spheres have been thoroughly subverted at all levels. So we are not going to have a free and fair census operations in the state. These things were ignored. So what happened that between 2001 and 2011, and once the 2011 census report started coming out, we could see that the population, Hindu population of Jammu had almost gone down from 40%, more than 40%, to just more than 28%. This more than 10% fall of the population in any other country would have been taken as a catastrophic situation. And commissions would have been created to understand what has happened. How does it happen? But in India, as usual, to hide the compromises, fundamental compromises which were made in Jammu and Kashmir, this whole process was ignored. We had a process in which, we had an election process in which from Jammu, BJP got 25 MLAs, and then a compromise process guided by the same consideration of handing over virtually their party to the PDP, ultimately resulting in a spate of such humiliating, disgusting incidents and not insulting incidents for the nation. And then when the support from the Mahbooba Mufti government was withdrawn and the government fell. See, Article 370 was removed last year. It's now more than a year since it was removed. At that time, we thought probably the whole cycle of this internal subversion, of describing abdication as tactics, of describing virtually capitulation as strategy, that cycle has probably ended. We described the removal of Article 370 as removal of the imperialist albatross from the neck of India. Article 370 was the legacy of the Cold War politics, in which India was caught up in the late 40s and subsequently. Article 370 was reflected also the imperialist stranglehold of India by the imperialist powers. Article 370 also represented the grip of Muslim identity politics on the state of India. Now, when it was removed, we thought, and we described it as a liberating act. We at that time said that the edifice of a Muslim state on the territory of India has been dismantled. And we said that hopefully now the de facto edifice of this Muslim state in the form of internal policy, in the form of formulation, in the form of strategic imperative, in the form of attitudes, intellectual proclivities, or intellectual habits, they will change, and we will see that J&K Union Territory is now ushering into an era of legitimate, what you call as integration with India. Now, having said this thing, I want to just underline two things. That the Hindus and all the non-Muslims were used not as political counterweights, but as cosmetic appendages to justify and legitimize a thoroughly and essentially a communal compromise with the Muslim identity politics in J&K. And Hindus had already suffered a genocide in Kashmir, which Indian state did not recognize. And the genocide and the jihad started spilling over into the Jammu. So in this entire process, what was steering us was not only the survival, immediate survival. What was staring at the patriotic people of Jammu and Kashmir state was how to ultimately address the national interest and how to address the survival interest. For addressing the survival interest, it was critical to recognize that the arrangement which Indian state made or the Indian political class made with the political leadership of Kashmir, that arrangement had scarcely failed. Coexistence had been rejected, and Hindus were on the throes of a very clear existential war. A battle of survival was staring ahead in front of them. So this whole situation made it critical, not only from the survival perspective, but from the national perspective, that will the population of Jammu survive this onslaught? Population of Kashmiri Pandits could not survive the onslaught in Kashmir Valley. The communal experimentation, ultimately the communal contract, which was created with the Muslims of Kashmir, the Muslim leadership of Kashmir, which was described as the refutation of two-nation theory and the victory of secularism, that had ultimately reached a climax when the Hindus of Kashmir were thoroughly religiously clean. And it was, the jihad was spilling over to Jammu, it was spilling over to whole of rest of India, and the genocidal war was spilling over into Jammu. How to respond to it? The state of India and the political class of India wanted to fudge it. They wanted to cover it at all levels. And for them, the critique of this arrangement was most embracing. The critique of this arrangement by the Hindus, by the non-Muslims, was most embracing. And we could see that the desperation was there, that somehow, how could we make these non-Muslim segments of the population to recognize that they're being assigned a status of a buffer or a sandbag is a strategic imperative, and they have to agree to live in this type of a situation. That type of a situation is still now. I don't think at any level, from strategic point of view, from a military point of view, from a political point of view, there is a discourse which we could see, which would recognize that the survival of Hindus in J&K state is critical, which would recognize the reversal of genocide of Hindus of Kashmir is critical ultimately for the future of India. In hushed tones, in back rooms, people would talk. Strategic experts would say they will talk, but formally they could not take the discussion. They will not take the discourse into the realm of this arena, because everybody thought that it was politically correct to discuss this issue. Kashmiri Hindu genocide was described as a migration, in spite of the fact when JKLF was banned, Government of India declared that a genocide had been unleashed by JKLF on the Hindus of Kashmir. Still, the Hindus of Kashmir were treated as migrants. The viciousness of the situation was that the Hindus of Jammu, they were also treated as a buffer, as a sandbag. Now, when I am telling you this thing,
please conclude, Doctor. We're short of time. Please.
Okay. We have reached a stage where we have to basically re-examine the whole paradigm of the nation building in J&K. Balancing and counterbalancing will not help. The cardinal argument should be that the patriotic nationalist population segments have to be saved, they have to be preserved. The type of dispensation which has been evolved, it has destroyed them thoroughly. And that makes the reorganization of the existing Jammu and Kashmir an imperative necessity. And I think the reorganization with this perspective in Kashmir create a foothold for the Hindus of Kashmir. It has to be seen not only as a secular foothold, it has to be seen as a geopolitical foothold and separate Jammu from Kashmir, rest of Kashmir. This is a critical necessity because if northern frontier of India has to be stabilized, then the population segments who have no problem to be problems with India, with the nation of India, they have to be consolidated. I think we are still far away from this realization. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. You've given us a very good insight into the history of formation of the present, this bifurcation of J&K state. And you've also highlighted how exactly these things came about, how the hegemony was granted to part of the J&K state from Delhi into their sort of arena of things, into their scheme of things, and how it ultimately affected the part of Jammu that it is today, and it is asking for its separate statehood, is asking for a separate entity, not only to sort of stabilize its own self, but also to act as a buffer, because whatever the radicalization, whatever extremism which has been transported from Pakistan into Kashmir, into Jammu and India, it should not be allowed to sort of go further. So maybe you have a point on that, and we respect whatever views you have given, and I'm sure you've given us a good analysis of that. Now, hereafter, we would go on to one of the intellectual common man of Jammu, Mr. Jagmohan Sharma, who is an engineer of resort, engineer of repute, and he's worked pan-India, and he's been a very, very non-controversial person, and he's a total intellectual, non-religious, non-political, and he represents the view of a common man of Jammu. But before he goes there, I would like to welcome Major General Govardhan Singh Jamwal, who joined us late, and I guess my initial welcome, even our Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza, who joined us from UK, and he's one of the members of the POJK in exile in UK. So he would also be talking to us a little later. So I welcome you all, sir, and all those Professor Suresh Chandra who joined us late, and even Kal Tripathi is there. Welcome to you all to the show. So now we would request Mr. Jagmohan Sharma, sir, please give us what is the perspective of a common man from the day-to-day living point of view. Dr. Charangu has given us a intellectual history and certain complex logic. Why should you have a statehood for Jammu? You tell us what a common man, when I say common man, a man on the street, a ready wala, or let's say a shopkeeper, or let's say a normal office goer, what does he feel about this whole game? I mean, should the state of Jammu be a reality, or it is just a myth? Mr. Jagmohan Sharma, please.
Brigadier Sahab, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak in this August forum. It's really difficult to speak after Dr. Changu has spoken because he speaks from his heart. He has control on the history and he has control over the situations as they evolve, and he puts them forth in a very forthright manner. At the same time, I see Professor Harbans Singh Sambayar also in the audience. It again becomes difficult to speak when he's there because he has control over so many things, the history and everything he knows. And in fact, he's sort of a guru for me as far as historical part is concerned. But the fact remains, in the outright, I would say that Jammu should be separated out from Kashmir. Rather, it should be de-hyphenated from Kashmir. There are so many reasons for it. And I'll relate a very interesting anecdote. Two things I'll tell you, very interesting. In 1971-72, when I was still a teenager, a hockey team from J&K colleges together, they went to play in Punjab, some kind of a tournament. And when they returned from there, they had lost the game with 21 goals. So a very young Sardarji, a captain of the team from Jammu, when he was asked about it, he was very candid. He said, you know what? We were well trained, we were prepared for it, we went for the game. But the problem actually was that we never fought together the Punjab team, because that is the team that which defeated them. We sort of played amongst each other. Jammu boys playing against Kashmir boys, and Kashmir boys playing against Jammu boys. And there was no real fight with Punjab. So we lost with 21 goals. Now I'll fast forward to 2020. Recently, because the audience is international in that sense, and maybe they'll understand it or not, unless they are Indians and they know India well, but then this is what happened. In this year, in the early 2020, there was a decision by the electricity department of J&K to install 1,15,000 electric meters in Jammu and Kashmir, 35,000 in Kashmir, 80,000 in Jammu. So there was a huge hue and cry because the Jammuites said that we pay for the electricity charges more. We pay more taxes. We pay everything more than what Kashmir people pay, but still we are being metered more than the Kashmir people. Why it should happen? So obviously government decided that, okay, meters will be equally distributed amongst the 2 points. So what I'm basically trying to say is, these are two examples which tell us the problem which ails Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir over a period of time, especially after 1989-90, it has fallen into an uncalled for injurious competition, which is injurious to both. And the pulls and pushes are of such a kind that the two provinces, they don't provide a cohesive kind of a thing. And when things are not cohesive, you know, if you go through the history of Jammu and Kashmir after independence, you'll see that everything Kashmir looked for, it went to Kashmir without fail. They got their medical colleges first. They got their engineering college first. In present times, they got the university first. The Jammu and Kashmir University was located in Jammu. And when the Jammuites fought for it, and they fought for it very bitterly, then only something came to Jammu. One example, if you know GGM Science College, there's a memorial out there. In that place, three students were killed because they were looking for a university in Jammu, an agriculture college in Jammu, and a technical college in Jammu. This was way back in 1960 somewhere. 66, 67 probably. And one of the leaders who led that agitation that time was Professor Bhim Singh, who was himself a student, surprisingly. Now, come back to somewhere 80s. 5 people died in Kishtwar. You know for what? Fighting for a college. They wanted a college for Kishtwar, which was not being given to them. By whom? Because basically the administration, the political dispensation was generally Kashmiri. So I'm not talking about 89, 90. I'm talking of an era which was much before that. So every time, whenever Jammuites wanted to have something, they had to fight for it. I'll give you another interesting example. In 60s up to 70s, we have a public distribution system. In Kashmir, every family member would get 20 kgs of rice per person at 20 paise a kg. A kilo, a sare those days, it was not kilogram, sare. Later on, the kilogram thing came in. And while in Jammu, it was 80 paise and only 5 kgs was given to every person in a family. So see, the discrimination started from there. And one interesting thing about it is the Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, when he was asked about it, because that time Jammu and Kashmir had Prime Minister in Bakshibullah Muhammad, when he was asked about this difference, he said, because Jammuites, you are already Indians, it is the Kashmiri people who have to be Indianized. So naturally, they have to be compensated like this. Now, we must also understand one very important thing. What is Jammu? People who live in Jammu or belong to Jammu, they will, it's a very common thing for them. But for people who are basically the international audience, I would like to say that today, Jammu is a home to all the major religions of the world. We have Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Jains, Buddhists, tribes, Gujars, Bakrwals, Gaddis. It's home to lakhs of Kashmiri Hindus and Pandits who escaped from the valley of Kashmir consequent to escalating terrorist activities of 1989 and 90. There were some, I would say, nationalist Sikhs and Muslims also who escaped from there and settled here in Jammu. Then steadily, when 89-90 escalated, there were Kashmiri Muslims, normal Kashmiri Muslims who didn't have that kind of a threat perception probably. They made Jammu their second home and they also came and settled here. And I don't know how many of them settled in Kashmir via the Roshni Act. Roshni Act is again a different kind of thing. Brigadier Saab will understand it. So this act has been struck down by the Jammu and Kashmir High Court now, and something else is happening in that. But at the moment, I would just leave it there. Then it's home to refugees from Pakistan who came here in 1947 and Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Rather, I would say Pak-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and then Gorkhas. And added to that, whether you like it or not, you have Bangladeshis and Rohingya refugees who are also living here. They are living here wonderfully. In Jammu itself, people speak around 10 languages and dialects. They speak Dogri, Punjabi, Hindi, Urdu, English, of course, Gojri, Pahari, Bhadrawai, Kishtwadi, Punchi, Padri, Siraji, Bharmauri, Pogli, and so on. So what is Jammu? Jammu today is the most secular of the territories of the two provinces. And this is the territory which needs to be defended. And it needs to be defended constitutionally. So, touch wood, today Jammu is quite peaceful. It has had a very gory time some time back. 1989 was not good for at least the peripheral areas of Jammu. Today it is peaceful. To maintain its peace and to maintain its structure as it is, the best course is to carve out a different state, additional state under the Union territory, under the Union of India. In fact, if you look at it, Jammu Kashmir should have these two provinces should have been two states in 1946-47 itself, because the Quit India movement of Sheikh Abdullah was against the Dogras. Some people try to say that Quit India movement, Quit Kashmir movement was akin to Quit India movement. But Quit India movement was different in the sense that the British left India, and later on, British and Indians became friends. They were two sovereign countries. In this particular case, the Quit Kashmir movement created a situation where Kashmiris became the bosses of those people who till very recently were in the power structure of the government. And then, even to up to that extent, it would have been fine. But after 47, when Sheikh Abdullah got the government, there was no outreach to these people. These people were considered to be such people who have been vanquished. And you know it, the Praja Parishad movement was there, in which subsequently, and what was Praja Parishad movement looking for, basically? They were looking for one state, total integration with India, and surprisingly, which many people will not know, that even the Indian national flag was not allowed to be hoisted in Jammu and Kashmir till 1953 December. It was only after Sheikh Abdullah was removed from prime ministership of the country, from the state, that for the first time when Darbar moved to Jammu in 1953 December, the national flag was permanently hoisted on the Secretariat of Jammu, and after that, the flag continued to be there.
Sir, may I request you to please conclude, sir?
I'm just concluding. Now, and incidentally, I'll give me 2 minutes, and rather 3-4 minutes. One person who saw this coming was Dr. Karan Singh. He constantly, regularly wrote to the Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, that at least what you could probably provide to the people of Jammu is some kind of a provincial autonomy, so that their voice is heard. But that was never. He wrote so many times. Professor Sambyal will tell you, he wrote so many times. He constantly argued with them, but that never happened. And to conclude, why Jammu should be a state? Because then the destiny of Jammu will be guided by the people of Jammu. It will not be. We have had only once we had one chief minister of Jammu and Kashmir who was from Jammu province. That was Ghulam Nabi Azad. For all said and done, he diverted he remained chief minister only for 2.5 years. We might not, like, there will be so many people who will not agree with him on so many things, like Roshni Act, for example. But there was development in tourism in Bhadrawa for the first time. And Ghulam Nabi Azad was not a lightweight before he became the chief minister. You'll be surprised to know that his own village, where he belonged to, that village got a permanent road only after he became the chief minister of the state. So that is why to maintain the secular fabric of Jammu, to give power to the people of Jammu, to ensure that they don't have to look every time towards Kashmir, Mubarak Mandi. Isn't it a shame basically that such an iconic place of the Jammu pride or Dogra pride or whatever you call, we have to look towards some other people to get it restored. And there are so many forts, there are so many tourist circuits where we can always have our people divert attention to, and that will certainly give employment opportunities to people, the youth of Jammu. Thank you very much, Brigadier Saab. There was so much to be told, but since you say the time is not there, thank you very much. Thank you very much to everybody who is listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jagmohan Sharma. Thank you for your insight. I'm sorry we always have time constraints. Ladies and gentlemen, after Dr. Ajay Charangu gave us a bit of a history and gave us some geopolitical perspective about this particular place, and then now Mr. Jagmohan has told us about the marginalization of the Jammu region and the domination and the various issues to the aspects. Now we will turn towards Colonel Satish Lalhotra, soil but served outside Jammu for a long time. So, Sir Lalhotra, can I request you to sort of put a sort of a broad light on what are the challenges as far as the leadership issues in Jammu are concerned? And if we fundamentally agree to go in for a statehood for Jammu region, are we ready for that? Do we have the adequate and a competent leadership to take us to that place and thereafter run our affairs to the satisfaction of the people of Jammu, as has been conveyed by Mr. Jagmohan Sharma? So, Colonel Lalhotra, please.
Good evening, sir. At the very outset, let me convey my thanks to you for inviting me to such a platform where such a august gathering of speakers are already accumulated here.
Colonel Lalhotra, can you switch off one of your devices? Your voice is echoing on two devices. So one can be switched off.
Just a minute, sir. Okay, I'll broadly come down to the basics of statehood of Jammu. There are basically three challenges which are basically facing us. First is basically the political challenge, the social challenge, and the economic challenge. Now, before that, I proceed for the political challenge. Let me tell how exactly we Dogra have missed the bus. Number one, there is no credible leadership of Dogras at the state level or at the central level to take up the cudgels for the statehood of Jammu. I'll explain you how. Initially, during independence, in fact, before that, Pandit Premnath Dogra and Balraj Madhok, who were basically stalwarts of BJP and who started this Praja Parishad and Ek Pradhan Ek Nishan agitation in 1952, they in fact were basically the standard bearers for carrying forward the legacy of statehood of Jammu. Reason being that immediately after Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's death in 1953, that should have been basically the ominous bells which should have started ringing in their ears. Look, if this is the state of affairs which Jammu is going to bear, then it's better that we part ways with Kashmir. But we missed the bus. Second opportunity came in 1956 when the State Reorganization Committee took place. All the states in the country were basically going on linguistic basis. Why did we keep quiet? Why couldn't these Dogra leaders of that time could put their viewpoint, look, on the basis of linguistic aspirations, we should be basically forming part separate from Kashmir, and we don't have anything in common with Kashmir. I'm being very frank and forthright. So that's the second time we missed the bus. Anyway, like coming to the political challenge as such, the biggest challenge which we are facing now is the unity. Are we united enough to pose a united front for a Jammu statehood? We are not. Like my previous worthy speaker told, that there's a lot of infighting. How do we reduce that? Because the first step basically begins from that only. Unless we reduce our infighting, we will not be able to project a united front for statehood of Jammu. Number two is, how do we convince the majority of Jammu population of the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A? This is another biggest political challenge, which in case Jammu statehood comes into being, we have to convince the local population of Jammu. Because till now, the local population of Jammu, they were basically afflicted by a sense of xenophobia, fear of outsiders. How do we remove the fear of outsiders? This is one of the biggest challenges which political dispensation of Jammu, in case if at all Jammu comes into being, has to be removed. The fear of outsiders, that is xenophobia. Thirdly, the political challenge for the state of Jammu will be that the unequal or the imbalance which has been the order of the day since the time of inception of JNK. Have we been able to project this imbalance? I'll be very frank and forthright that one of our Dogra leaders, Mr. Ghazalal Dogra, who was finance minister for good about 26 years, imagine in Dr. Sheikh Abdullah's cabinet, failed to do anything for Jammu. Why couldn't you do this? Imagine for 26 years. So these are the groundswell of things which will convince us that we have been always short-shifted by Kashmiris. Why couldn't we come out of the shadow of Kashmir people? This will be one of the biggest challenges again facing the Dogra leadership if at all Jammu comes into play. I'm just trying to list out the political challenges, because in the initial only stages I have told that there are basically three challenges which are basically facing the state of Jammu. That is political challenge, social challenge, and economic challenge. I am dwelling upon the political challenge. Thereafter, the next challenge will be for the next challenge for the political leadership in Jammu will be to prepare the second rung of leadership in Jammu, so that if at all Jammu comes into being, these people, they're able to take up the cudgels even at the center and at the state level, which unfortunately I don't find anybody. We hardly have any representation at the central level, except for Mr. Dr. Arun Jaitley, who is no more now. He had some connection with JNK. Otherwise, there's hardly anybody which we can say at the center who can take up the case of Jammu and project. Look, we are the people who have been marginalized for good about 70 years. So this will be again one of the biggest political challenges which will be facing the local leaders of Jammu to make a second rung of leadership in Jammu. Now I'll dwell upon the economic challenges, the biggest challenge of all the three challenges. The economic challenge is the biggest challenge. What economic model do we have in front of us to project Jammu as a statehood? We all are aware that the entire Jammu region, starting from Lakhanpur right till Kishtwar and all, it's basically mountainous area, Kandi area, with hardly any irrigation facilities. There's no industry worth the name. The agriculture is nominal. The irrigation system is in shambles. So how do we prop up that? Now, we don't have much of industries. We don't have much of entrepreneurs. So the aim is to have some entrepreneurship development in Jammu. But for that, you require capital. From where will the capital come? This is one of the biggest economic challenges which will be facing the people of Jammu, if at all Jammu comes into play. Then another challenge for economic development of state of Jammu will be that I find most of the people, because often on and keep on visiting Jammu, I find that most of the people, most of the youngsters, they hanker for government jobs. Why government jobs? Why can't you produce your own jobs? Where is the where is the fillip for doing entrepreneurship? Why can't we think on those lines? This will be again one of the biggest economic challenges which will be facing the state of Jammu. And for that, all the local population, including the local leaders, they'll have to sit together, they have to put their head together and think on those lines. Another biggest economic challenge which state of Jammu, and which I'm going to quote with an example, will be that imagine Kathua, the gateway of Jammu from JNK, gateway of JNK from Punjab side and gateway to Punjab from JNK side is in shambles. We hardly have 110 industries. Now, if you try to compare the same Kathua with Baddi, which is in Himachal, which is the gateway of Himachal for Punjab, imagine Baddi is one of the largest pharma hubs in Asia. Baddi has got 3,120 industries, with major pharma industries like Dr. Reddy's Lab, Cipla, Pfizer, everything. And imagine Baddi has employed about 50% of workforce of Himachal. Half of revenue of Himachal is being produced by Baddi. And that is also gateway of Himachal. Can we compare Kathua with that? Half of industries of Kathua, they are lying sick. Why can't we do anything for that? I mean, this will be again one of the biggest economic challenges which will be faced by the local leadership in case Jammu comes into being. Now, the other problem which will be basically faced as a part of economic challenge will be the poor infrastructure which is prevalent in Jammu. I remember about 3 years back when I was posted in BD Badi in 19th Infantry Brigade. To my horror, I found that most of the roads in the industrial area of Badi Brahman and Birpur, they were in shambles. There was only one road. Imagine such a big industrial area, only one road, and that too in shambles. And I remember I met the president of BBIA, that is Badi Brahman Industrial Association chief also, and I told him, why can't you do anything about this? I said, what can I do? I have been given 101 representation to the JNK government that time. I'm talking of 2015-16, but despite my so many representation, nothing is happening on ground. I mean, this will be one of the biggest challenges which will be faced by the local population and the local leaders in case state comes into being, that how do we revive economic growth of Jammu. Then is the shortage of power, which everybody is aware. Despite being bestowed with the best of natural resources in the country, we still are deficient. We still we still go with the begging bowl. Sorry for using this word for the this thing for power to the center. Why so? You take the case of this thing Himachal. Just take their example. In fact, they are surplus, and that surplus electricity is being given to the northern grid. Whereas if you see, we are much more richer as compared to Himachal as far as natural resources are concerned. Half of our power projects, they are lying in limbo. Why? Why they are lying in limbo? But if you try to compare the same thing with Himachal, they are progressing by leaps and bounds. I mean, these are certain challenges which I feel should be basically addressed by the local population of Jammu, by the local dispensation of the Jammu, by local leaders of Jammu, in case, if at all, we want to see that statehood of Jammu sees the light of the day. Unless these things are given their due thought and due importance, I don't think anything much will be happening on ground. Reason being, every time when I go to JNK, I find that the things don't move. Whatever they were there about 5 years back, the same things are there. So I feel that unless these three challenges, that is economic challenge, political challenge, and social challenge, they're addressed in a holistic manner, we will be just roaming around in circles, and we will not be able to convince the center. Look, we have been short shifted for the last 73 years. Economically, though, like politically, we are down. And imagine, despite that, nothing much is happening on ground. Now, this saying, what you call, very urgent appeal to the listeners out here is: do we have any practical solution for this, for these three challenges? I mean, my point is that unless we sit together, we put our heads together and find some tangible solutions to these three challenges, I'm afraid the statehood of Jammu, though very well articulated, will remain a myth. It will not turn into reality. To turn into reality, these challenges, they have to be taken as an opportunity. And unless these opportunities are turned in our own advantage, nothing much is going to happen. Though I may be sounding slightly pessimistic, but the things are like that only. So how do we turn this pessimism into optimism? Is how do we change these challenges into opportunities? That's what I thought. I'll convey my points. And I don't know how far do you agree with me, sir? But these are the certain things which I feel that it should be basically dwelled upon, and due thought should be given by our leaders who are sitting in.
Thank you, Colonel Malhotra. You've given a very wonderful insight. And now I would request Mr. Harbans Singh Samyal to please come in and comment on what Colonel Malhotra is saying, and followed by comments from Mr. K.B. Jandyal, please, sir, because you all are having in-depth knowledge about the history as well as the local conditions, because Colonel Malhotra has given us not a different viewpoint altogether. So let us try and talk about it, or rather debate about this. Mr. Samyal, sir.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Dhiman. And good evening to everyone.
Good evening, sir.
I'll first begin with what Mr. Jagmohan Sharma said. I don't think he had the time to say all that he wanted to say, but the basic structure which he built was that Jammu has been discriminated right from the beginning. What we fail to remember is that Jammu is the province which is the mother of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The state of Jammu and Kashmir was created by Jammu. Jammu existed even before it became a Jammu and Kashmir state. So I would like to link that with the topic today, that is stated for Jammu. I was just looking at the population figures of some of the states, smaller states of the country. The biggest, smallest state is population-wise, perhaps Himachal Pradesh. It has about 1+ crore population. Jammu, I believe it has 45 or 50 lakhs, 75 lakhs, sorry. And if you look at the northern states, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Manipur, and Nagaland, Sikkim, Tripura, all of them are smaller states, much smaller than Jammu. Colonel Lalhotra mentioned about the dynamic progress that was made by Himachal Pradesh in power sector as well as the industrial sector. May I remind that when Himachal Pradesh was created, it was a small state and everybody questioned its viability. And yet, being small, compact, there was a very strong desire among the people to do well for their state. The result was that their civil service was it still is even today, by and large, free from any corruption issues. The selection process is free of any influence. And they get good officers from wherever the country can provide them. They appear in the competition and they come to the state of Himachal Pradesh and they are committed to the state after that. That urge, that desire to build a state that has been there, that is always there in the smaller states, particularly after being bifurcated from the bigger state. Power, of course, they had rivers, they built their power structure on the hydroelectric power. The same can be done in Jammu. We know that we have lost a lot, not only Jammu, even Kashmir has lost on that count because of the failure to fully utilize the waters of the rivers under the Indus Water Treaty. We can do that. Kathua is a failure, I agree. Samba is not. Samba pharmaceutical industry is as good as the Baddi industry. Perhaps it came later, perhaps it was, the infrastructure was better, and perhaps by that time the bureaucracy, the political class, they had learned their lessons, and perhaps the fact that Mr. Azad was the chief minister for some time, that went to the credit of, the progress goes to the credit of Mr. Azad. We were talking about the college in Kishtwar. Jammu, Samba had a school, high school in 1905. And we were not given college till Azad became the chief minister. So I'm sometimes surprised when people talk, when we usually talk in terms of Hindu and Muslim, Kashmiri Muslim, Hindu, Jammu, that Azad never discriminated against Samba. The Abdullah family always discriminated against Samba. The point I'm trying to drive at is that a state is possible. The state can be made viable. These are the factors which contribute to the success of a state. Foremost being the commitment. Commitment of the people, commitment of the bureaucracy, commitment of the whole machinery that is working for the state.
Thank you very much,
That
sir.
pride has to be brought back.
Sir, thank
Yes,
you very
please.
much. We enlightened by your views and whatever rejoinder you have given on Colonel Lalhotra and the comparisons. Since you are an expert sitting in Chandi Mandir, I know you can always do it a better way. Now let's have Mr. Jandial who's an erstwhile ex-IAS officer and has been in the administration of Jammu and Kashmir ever since it was formed. Now let's see what are his views to whatever panelists have said, sir. Yeah, Jagmohan sir, after Mr. Jadiyal finishes, I'll give you a chance.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Saab. I don't really wish to comment much on the debate because I personally don't subscribe to this view that Jammu was not made or trifurcation was not made by the Modi government merely because Jammu separate entity was not viable. Viability of a separate territorial unit was not the consideration of the Modi government. With a learned military experts all on the panel, it is a strategic is a problem that you can't make out a separate Kashmir which is inhabited by 98% population of one faith, one religion. I don't find in anywhere in the country either the UT or the state has been carved out on the religious basis. If you make, there was an argument of my learned friend, Dr. Chirangu, that there is a need for consolidation of nationalist forces or Jammu Kashmir being a sensitive area. I don't find a reason how this consolidation can be made by making Jammu as a separate state or separate UT. If we are looking at the population, the demography, we have a very strong segment of population which is Muslims. It is not a question of Kashmir versus Jammu. I personally feel I have served in the state for 44 years and have risen to the level of a secretary and even remained 5 years as a member of Public Service Commission. I never in my service career, nobody pressurized me to discriminate Jammu. And I wonder when we talk of discrimination, we have always non-Muslim, most of the time, non-Muslim chief secretaries. Most of the time. We have all the time non-Muslim DGPs. All the time, most of the time, all non-Muslim chief justices. We even had a planning commissioner. The Noor Muhammad probably was the last planning commissioner in mid-70s. And or later on, maybe the Mr. Khande. All were non-Muslims. How come this discrimination concept came, or a deliberate attempt on the part of any population, any government? Either we in the bureaucracy who hailed from Jammu were totally incompetent, we or the leadership, political leadership is responsible because they could not raise their voice. There's always a, I always fail to understand the whole thing because I am insider. So are many people who were with me in the services. Even in the Public Service Commission, I don't want to talk about in a subjective manner. During my 5-year tenure in Public Service Commission, I made it a point that in every selection, there should be rationale and every district of the state should get a representation. And to your surprise, who supported my cause was the 2 Muslim officer members of the Kashmir. So it is, I think we should not get into these prejudices. Even Mr. Jagmohan Sharma was talking, my learned friend, about the national flag. I wonder, that national flag was, he says, after Sheikh was removed, the national flag was hoisted. I'm afraid it is not correct. the whole concept of Jansang two flag, it started with 1950s, and it is a Nehru Sheikh Abdullah agreement of 90 probably. I'm forgetting. The Professor Harbans Singh will be remembering more. Either 52 or 50. There was a agreement that both the national flag will have the same respect in Jammu and Kashmir as the state flag. So national flag was there. I don't know, but having said so, maybe having said so, I look at this situation that Jammu being a very peaceful, harmonious, secular, totally secular area, and as Mr. Jagmohan has rightly said, is a home of all community and all displaced persons, including Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmiri Muslims. And they are more comfortable. I normally talk to my former colleagues who are settled, who are coming from the winter season in Jammu, that Jammu is more safe for you people also, Kashmiri Muslims, than Kashmir, because there is more harmony, more peace. So it is about thinking that we have to probably, in my thesis, we have to live with Kashmir.
Thank you very much, sir. We are delighted to know your take calls from others. Let's hear Professor Suresh Chandra, sir, who has always spent a lot of his younger days time in Srinagar itself. Professor Suresh Chandra, sir, please. I think he is not there probably.
Dhiman, I would like to come in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Sabyal.
Just a little clarification, Mr. Jandial, good evening. The national flag was, Mr. Jagmohan Sharma is right, it was unfurled only after the Delhi Agreement was implemented by Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad and not Sheikh Abdullah. Sheikh Abdullah agreed but did not implement. He did not implement that. And that is the reason. That is the reason Dr. Karan Singh did not attend one of the functions.
Sir, I have to go back to my drawing room, because I remember our Professor Chamanlal Gupta. He was in a science college and he was arrested, objecting that out of the two flags, the state flag should be removed. And he was sent for Riyasi jail. I still remember Gopal Sachar is a learned journalist who is still alive. He's the oldest, senior most journalist. He also vouched for that. This is my, you could be more right, but I will have to go back and see what actually was the date when the...
Please do.
Okay, sir, okay. That point is there. Professor Suresh Chandra has come back. Sir, can we hear you on this, sir?
Am I audible?
Yes, please, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Sir.
You see, broadly, most of the people were in favor of separate Jammu state. And Shri Jagmohan Sharma very eloquently put forward the various viewpoints, to which I fully subscribe. So there is not much to say about it, but I have to say one thing about what Colonel Satish Lalota said, that about economic, political and social challenges. You see, these challenges are there, I agree with him, but these challenges cannot be met by individual citizens. So these challenges can only be met once the, separate state is there. Only then economic, political and social challenges will take place, because there is a lot of government intervention for these things. And when this, this flag controversy is being there, for some time, I don't remember, up to 53 or 54, the state flag of Maharaja, which was yellow and saffron, was hoisted on the secretariat. I don't know at what point it came out. It was there for a long time, because I could always see from my house at Mubarak Mandi, the flag was there, and then later on it was replaced by the red flag of with the cloth. But that's apart. That doesn't make any point. But I find from most of the presentations, they went on. And what my learned friend, Mr. Sharma, he has given all the advantages that there is no discrimination with the Jammu people as per Mr. Sharma's, KB Sharma's understanding is there. I think if you take a snap poll in Jammu, 90% people will say that there has been discrimination. I remember, though there is no official confirmation, we had a very brilliant cabinet minister by the name of Trilochan Dutt. Trilochan Dutt will not sign the file unless it also had certain Jammu representatives also. Supposing 4 positions are to be filled, if they were all Kashmiris, Trilochan Dutt will not sign without saying that include Jammu fellow. But the secretaries didn't understand why Trilochan Dutt is not signing it. I remember in Srinagar when we used to come sometime late to our house, his lights in the secretariat, Srinagar secretariat, he used to work from around up to 11 o'clock. I could see the lights in the secretariat. He was the one person who then saw to it that Jammu is not discriminated, and he did whatever best he could do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before I come to Colonel Lalhotra, sir, after I'll come to Lieutenant General Sushil Gupta, who's been the colonel of the regiment of the Jammu and Kashmir Rifles. So de facto, having spent 40 years with the people from Jammu, we can call him a citizen of Jammu. So we'll have his view after Colonel Lalhotra finishes his point. Colonel Lalhotra, please.
So, my point is basically regarding the regional imbalance. The regional imbalance which Jammu has been facing for decades. I'll try to compare this regional imbalance with the formation of Uttarakhand. I'm trying to just have a comparison. And this comparison, I am 100% sure, will awaken the people of Jammu that in case Uttarakhandi people, that is Kumaoni and Gadwalis, can carve out a separate state from the entire state of UP about 20 years back, what is stopping we Dogras to carve out the same Jammu state from JNK? I'll give you an example. There were 85 districts in UP and there were 8 hill districts in Uttarakhand. And Uttarakhand, that is Kumaoni and Gadwalis, they kept on fighting for good about 25-30 odd years for separate state because they knew that the entire revenue of UP was spent on the plain districts of UP, and hardly, you can say, just crumbs were being given to the hill districts. At the time, these people, they rose up in unison and they don't do anything with the UP government as such, and we want to have a separate hill state. And believe me, sir, because my own in-laws are settled there in Terai, and I have seen the transformation which has taken place in Uttarakhand for the last 20 years. I mean, I'll give an invitation in case you try to visit that place, starting from Muradabad. The border from Rampur is in UP. But the moment you go to Muradabad, Rampur, you will find all the roads, everything, electricity in shambles. But the moment you try to enter into Uttarakhand, you'll find a sea difference. You'll find a sea change. And the sea change has occurred only in the last 20 years. That is the point, that in case Gadwalis and Kumaonis, imagine the hilly people, they can carve out a separate state for themselves.
Point taken, Colonel Lalhotra. Your point taken that if
can't you
people
do
of Uttarakhand can do it, point taken, Colonel Lalhotra, if people from Uttarakhand can do it, or people from Himachal can do it, so can people from Jammu as well. Now let's listen to General Gupta, who was a de facto citizen, I'm calling him. Sir, what have your been impressions of all which has happened so far, sir?
Good evening. Good evening to everyone. Firstly, I must thank all of you all for a wonderful exposition about J&K. In fact, the learned speakers before me have spoken so well about the history and the effect of discrimination on Jammu from Srinagar, from basically Kashmir. I can understand the angst of all the people of Jammu for so many years of discrimination with the government, with the governor, with the people, the government acting totally in a partisan attitude towards the people of Kashmir. However, having been a military man throughout my life, I think the question of separating Jammu from Kashmir is actually fraught with danger. One must understand that the partition of India took place on the lines of religion. Now here what we are trying to say is partition against a state on the lines of religion. We may be opening up a Pandora's box. There are certain districts in the area of UP which are prominently Muslim areas. Tomorrow, they will also come up and say that they will have a separate state based on the lines of religion. So I am afraid this may not cut too much of ice. While there is no doubt that Jammu deserves to be a state, and it is very much possible for it economically, socially, and politically to be a viable state. But then from the strategic point of view, I think as of now, separating Jammu from Srinagar may not be the best of ideas in national integrity. That is all I have to say.
Thank you very much, sir. We are enlightened by your views. Now let's have General Govardhan Singh Jamwal. In fact, I have been waiting for him to come and speak, but I don't think he's very well, sir. Sir, can you speak, sir?
Can I speak now?
Yes, sir. Please, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I'm glad that you organized this very, very important and very timely discussion, because we people are thinking these days only one thing: how to live in Jammu and live our own life. I have seen the state for 90 plus years, 93 years, 19 years before independence, or 37 years in service, and now 35 years after retirement, being part of the government for 6 years, part of the political party of Farooq Abdullah for 12 years. And I will tell you, based on my experience, Jammu cannot live with Kashmir. Jammu cannot live with Kashmir. And if they live, it will be no life worth living. And this is based on my personal experience from the utterances of the people who have been ruling this. I can quote you instances after instances, but there's not much time. But let me say, we are not wanting to separate from Kashmir from a religion point of view. In Jammu still we may have more Muslims, and I would love to serve under a Muslim chief minister of Rajouri or Poonch. And for Kashmiris, we have no such thing. There's nothing. They are our brother. They are in my regiment. We have served with the Muslims, and they are doing wonderful work. And even now they will do. But when the government is formed, Kashmiris and Jammus cannot live together. This is the last word. Now I'll give you what Lalhotra said. Precisely for those three reasons we want to be separated. And economics is the most important. If we are independent with economic, we are all right. Our industry has never come. It will never come with Kashmiris in the government. Never come. They treat industry as if something, it is some kind of a baniyan shop, and they can make some money and live on them. What is our industry in Jammu doing? Now, if you look back, when we became independent, Kashmir had fruit worth 9,000 tons of fruit. And you know what is their fruit today? 20 lakh tons. In 2016, they had 16 lakh tons of fruit. And they've increased in the last 4 years of whatever they've thrown us out, Kashmiri Pandits out. They are adding 1 lakh ton fruit every year. This is their economics. But they will never let fruit grow here. When I tried to grow something we got from Srinagar, they said, you can't grow in Jammu. In fact, there was some kind of a pressure that we should not grow that. They will not let us grow at all. But I can tell you, Jammu is more beautiful, is more productive. We have, look at the land. We have got 1,000 feet from sea level, the plains of Jammu, then the Shivaliks, beautiful, full of all kinds of herbals and medicinal plants. I've gone and seen through them. Then the higher Bhadrwah, Kishtwar, Poonch, Rajouri. We have Kashmir in Jammu, but Kashmir doesn't have Jammu in Kashmir. We can produce apple here. Kashmir cannot produce mango. Now, I will tell you that when we became independent, Jammu had 1 crore of mango trees. Whatever the reasons, there are no more. We don't have even mangoes to eat, or even for our domestic, they come from Himachal Pradesh. This is our position of fruit. Go across. Who did not allow this? We may be also at fault, but we will not do anything unless we become independent and unless this discrimination, they will not let my industry, they have completely ruined. And if I tell you the facts now, I don't have the time, you will say the Jammu must be separated within 24 hours. Let anybody come sit down, I will convince anybody. This is not the time, but there is no other way. And we want to live together with Kashmir. Sushil is right that we are only suffering. I told the President of India, I had a long discussion with him as being a military secretary to the President, with the Shankar Dayal Sharma ji, wonderful man, very intelligent. He said, General Jamal, how can you say this? When General Zorawar has given us this state, how General Jamal can leave Kashmir outside? I said, you've been using Jammu as a ladder, and this ladder is all moth-eaten. It will crumble. You will not reach Jammu, Srinagar. But he said, no, we must see this. Our industry must come. Jagmohan was the governor then. He said, I'll ask Jagmohan to ensure that industry. He might have asked, but industry is zero today after 35 years. There's no industry at all in Jammu. So the ground facts, if you see, there is no alternative. Sooner we have, it will be as good a state as Himachal Pradesh. In fact, better. We have better economics and everything than even Himachal Pradesh. I can tell you that. But we must find some other way to keep Kashmir together, some other arrangements, or some kind of thing, overall one governor or something like that. But Jammu, Kashmir must be separated. If they are not separated, Kashmir will be lost. Otherwise, I can tell you politically, you separate Kashmir, Kashmir will be happy. They will fight among themselves, but there will be no discrimination against Jammu or against anybody. We have been 72 years spending our energies all against each other. Kashmiris are finding out how to subjugate Jammu. And Jammu has been trying to get out of them. We have wasted all our energies fighting. It is no longer, it is not Jammu and Kashmir. It is Jammu versus Kashmir. Let's make it Jammu and Kashmir. Now Ladakh has gone separately. They're doing wonderful. They'll be one of the best states of the world, I can tell you one day. And Jammu will be no less if it is separated. I can argue it any length, but that is my view also.
Thank you very much, sir. We enlightened by your views. Now the house is open. Anybody can ask any question, please. Okay, if there are no questions, may I request our special guest today, Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza, who joined us from UK. Sir, what are your views on the whatever discussion you heard this evening, sir?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I must say that it has been a very thought-provoking discussion for me, at least. And you see, when we talk of Jammu, we have gone into this habit of forgetting that a large chunk of Jammu, West Jammu, is still under the illegal occupation of Pakistan since 22nd of October 1947. And I think when we talk about Jammu, we should always inculcate and include the occupied part of Jammu. Now, the sad thing about the occupied territory of Jammu is that number one, West Jammu people have lost their identity as Jamwals. They are being called Kashmiris. Their fate, political fate, is now linked with the political fate of Kashmiris in the valley. they have been detached from any political, economic, or social or cultural links with our Jammu. And I think I quite agree with General Jamwal when he talks about Jammu being separated from Kashmir. I think it is very important that we should talk about this in great detail, because as General Jamwal has very rightly said, it is not about religion. It is not about creating two separate entities in the name of two nation theory. It's all about economics and it's about politics. The Kashmiri politicians have been very, very cunning in milking all the resources that have been uh, allocated for past 72, 73 years for Jammu Kashmir. They have been diverting all resources, funds, money, everything towards Kashmir. And we know that corruption among the political elite of Kashmiris has been not only rife, but has been, you know, of unimaginable magnitude. So I think that Jammu should be separated from Kashmir if Jammu has to, number one, survive. It's an existential crisis that Jammu is facing now in terms of economy, in terms of political representation. So I think that it is high time that we should start talking about separating Jammu from Kashmir and leave the Kashmir alone to the Kashmiris, as Mr. General Jamwal has very rightly and candidly put it, that let them fight among themselves and let they sort themselves out, and let us march on towards prosperity and a better future. And he's given an example of Ladakh. There is no doubt, you know, the Ladakh airport is now being expanded fourfolds. So why is that? Because of tourism, because they are foreseeing a large influx of tourists in Ladakh, and their airport is not big enough to cater for that amount of tourists. The second thing is Jammu Wals and the Dogras must never forget about our legacy. We should be proud of our legacy. At a time when it was the norm to expand territorially, we expanded our territory from Jammu to Kashmir to Gilgit-Baltistan to Tibet. And today we have become just short of beggars. We are literally begging. We are begging the Kashmiris, we are begging the center to provide us a technical college, to provide us an engineering college, to, you know, fix our economic depravities. This is a very shameful state that we as a Dogra people have been reduced to. And we cannot blame no one but ourselves. We have to blame only ourselves for being so naive and so complicit in this whole game of Jammu Kashmir Islamization and two nation theory and all that, that we have started to, from becoming assertive, we have started to become apologetic, as if we are committing a crime and we are to be blamed for what is happening in Kashmir. It's none of our fault. We are the victims, not Kashmir. Kashmir was never divided. Kashmir was never occupied. It is Jammu that was attacked. It was Jammu that was cut into pieces. It was Jammu that is being occupied by jihadi terrorists today. And there are 22 launching pads in Pakistani occupied Jammu from where terrorism is being infiltrated into Kashmir. So when we talk about the state of Jammu, which in future I hope we will see it happening, we should always discuss how are we going to retrieve our territory from Pakistan. Any talk about Jammu, the prosperity of Jammu, the political aspirations of Jammu is just an empty talk if it does not include a perspective about regaining our lost territory. Because even before the state of Jammu and Kashmir was formed, West Jammu, Mirpur, Bhimbar, Kotli, all of these areas were part of Jammu. They were Rajwadas, the 22 Rajwadas that were united by Gulab Singh and formed Jammu first. And then later on, after the Sikh war, Kashmir was added, and then, other things happened. So I am very much of the opinion that Jammu should be separated from Kashmir, and we should think of how are we going to regain our lost territory. Our lost territory is not the responsibility of no one else other than ourselves. It is our territory. First and foremost, it is Jammu territory. Then it is Indian territory. So what are the Jammuites doing to regain that territory? And the Jammuites have been believed into, getting into this fear that the West Jammu that is with Pakistan is a terrorist Jammu, and if they come and join Jammu, then they will be demographically, Hindus will be in a minority and stuff like that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We have been living together for centuries. It is only during the 1940s that due to two-nation theory and communal violence, Jammu has suffered. And this communal violence has to be addressed not by reciprocating communal politics, but by rejecting communal politics altogether. So
thank you very much.
My thoughts
Very enlightened with your views, and we take your suggestion that whenever we say Jammu, we must include the area in Pakistan occupied Jammu. That should also be talked about. And as we discussed the other day, we must have the representation also. But here I would like to, just for your information, a very interesting incident I would like to relate in front of you. On 22nd of October, we had those Black Day celebrations. That day we had certain people from PO Jammu, that is Mirpuris, protesting in Jammu. So I walked him to one of the leaders and I asked him, sir, now that you are displaced, what would you like to say? But he did not allow me to finish my question. He immediately said, why are you calling me displaced? I am not displaced. I said, but you people are displaced, and Article 370 has allowed you to start voting for the first time, and you are called DPs. He said, no, we are not displaced. We are misplaced. We are misplaced in history. Nobody remembers us. That is our plight today. So we are the misplaced people. So that is what is the sentiment of a guy who's migrated to Jammu from Mirpur side. So we would take this into account, and probably we must factor that into this entire whole gamut of things. So thank you very much, sir. Well, gentlemen, we running short of time. Anybody with a quick question? Yeah, Mr. Jagmohan, please go ahead.
Yes, Brigadier Sir, there were a couple of things which came up during the discussion. One was about the national flag. This is a letter by Dr. Karan Singh on 2nd of December 1953, which says, I am glad that Bakshi accepted my suggestion of flying the Union flag upon the Jammu Secretariat above the state flag. This was long overdue and has had a very healthy effect upon the public opinion here. So this is what Dr. Karan, and there are n number of letters written by Dr. Karan Singh to Jawaharlal Nehru, to the Prime Minister, that this flag, actually what I said was, it was for the first time allowed to be permanently hoisted. Otherwise, what would happen was on 15th of August, they would, on ceremonial, these thing occasions, the flag would be hoisted, but then in the evening, it would be just taken off and that's it. That is one thing. Number two, the population. When we speak of Jammu and Kashmir, we don't talk about the population. It is the political tribe of Kashmir which is the problem. And adding to this, now there are a couple of states, rather 3 states, which are going to be Muslim majority in India in another maybe 15, 20 years. Those are the statistics. So let us not get into that area. Number 4, why did Telangana separate out from Andhra Pradesh? They are culturally same. They talk the same language. They have same festivals. They live the same life. But then, because of economic reasons, Telangana said that we are not going to be Andhra Pradesh because Andhrites, they have had the maximum number of chief ministers in the state. Economically, they have prospered, but we haven't. They are educated and much better economically. We aren't. So Telangana came out of that. Now, coming to the discrimination part. Discrimination doesn't happen. Discrimination is a very systematic method. It doesn't happen visibly sometimes, but I can give you many situations where it happened visibly as well. And I have recently written a blog, Let's See the Woes of Jammu People. It's available on jagmohansharma.org. Anybody can see it. I write there often, and there are so many other things, sometimes very good, sometimes not nicely written, but yes, there they are. So my basic this thing, and then people spoke about Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh is a wonderful state in the sense, whatever they do it for Himachal, whether it is the chief minister, whether it is the administration, whether it is anybody. And when you move along the Himachal, let's say into Kulu Valley or Manali or these places, you will see that every single stream has been piped and they are generating power. Sometimes 1 megawatt, sometimes 2 megawatts, and it's visible to anybody who can go there and see it. So my third and the final thing, economically, when we are attached with Kashmir, are we doing anything which is are we getting any help from Kashmir economically? We are not. So whether we stay with Kashmir or we stay away from Kashmir, economy is going to be same. Rather, it will prosper because then we will concentrate on things and there will be development of leadership. Actually, the leadership of Jammu at the moment, whether it is political leadership, whether it's technical leadership, or it is, let's say, administrative leadership, it is sort of under a Stockholm syndrome. They don't understand, because it happens. Like it's when you go with a proposal to somebody and he doesn't listen to it, after some time you say, "Yaar, bahar mein jaye, kahe ko hum ghadi ghadi ek hi cheez kar rahe hain." I have seen it in technical area, in electricity department in Jammu and Kashmir. I have seen that people don't do anything because they say that even if we go with some good idea to the higher ups, they will not agree. So why should we ever break our mind head on this? So this is what I'm saying. Once you are empowered, there are certain things which happen and they happen for good. And coming to General Jamal, he will tell you how some of the industries in Jammu area were destroyed by some kind of a taxation which was not right. So if जैसे वो कहते हैं ना कि आपकी तकदीर अपने हाथ में अगर है, तो there are certain things which you can do right. कुछ गलत भी हो सकती हैं. I'm not saying that, but there are certain things which you can do right. But if अगर वो तकदीर किसी और के हाथ में है, then you can't do anything.
Thank you very much, sir. Your point taken. And I think, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we had a wonderful discussion for the last 1 hour and 55 minutes, in which the speakers gave different viewpoints. We had Dr. Chirangu telling us all about the history of the particular level of state that the Jammu has reached today. Then we had Mr. Jagmohan Sharma, who enlightened us with what are the plight of people, common man, how it goes ahead, how the discrimination takes place, how people are agitated, and what are the problems they're facing. Then we had Malhotra telling us about some leadership issues. and the esteemed panel then discussed about various possibilities as to how we go about comparing ourselves with Uttarakhand or with Himachal, and then what are the economic challenges and how things are happening in Jammu, how the chief ministers of different times, some of them helped Jammu, some did not, and then how the leaders in Jammu behaved right from the times of Praja Parishad and right from 1947, what all happened. And we have a general consensus, especially the observations of Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza, who belongs to Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and then finally he's an exiled from there also to UK. And he had a wonderful insight into the whole thing, how he perceived the entire Jammu as one entity, and which is being dominated by the Kashmir-centric people who are predominantly controlled by Pakistanis, guided by Pakistanis to sort of wage some kind of a war against the Union of India. He the entire thing in a very, very correct perspective, in a very understanding way, and we are grateful to that. So that is what probably we have the conclusions, and which will soon be published in a few days' time, and it will be shared with you all. And thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Most of you have already left because I know 1 hour, beyond 1 hour, sitting in front of a is not a very easy thing. So we only left with 13 people. But Varun, how many people are viewing us on social media elsewhere?
Sir, there are many number of people who are viewing us right now. We have been viewed on several pages, around about 10,000 people, and it will be shared more in the due course of time and within YouTube also, and then the number will increase in Facebook, YouTube, and other social media. But sir, I would like to ask one question to the panel, if you allow.
Okay, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Sir, see, there is a political vacuum in Jammu, and because of that political vacuum, I think the dream of getting a separate state is somewhere far. So, is there any solution to fill that vacuum of polity in Jammu? That's my question, sir.
Any taker, sir?
Yes, I think your next discourse should be how to make a state, Jammu state viable. Everything will come out.
Thank you. Yes, Kalalotra, what do you say?
The point which has been brought out recently is very valid. In fact, if you try to look at it, the same point I try to bring out in my discourse, that the biggest challenge which will be facing the state of Jammu will be the political challenge. Now, herein comes the role of the local leaders, that we have to develop right from the grassroots level. Nobody else from outside is going to come and help us. If you think that somebody else is going to help us to spring up the Jammu leadership, nobody is going to do that. We have to do the thing with our own efforts. So this is the biggest challenge which will be facing the Jammu statehood, in case, if at all, Jammu comes to be. So for that, right now only, the perspective should be basically long-term perspective as to how exactly a good leader should be identified, who basically don't go for the parochial views, who have a very holistic view of the Jammu as such. And those leaders should be identified and they should be nurtured. And those leaders then in turn could be basically trained to go for a leadership job either at the center or at the state level. I mean, this is only via media by which we can develop the leadership of Jammu.
Thank you, Kalalotra. We appreciate your views, and I'm sure whatever explanation you've given has been taken by Colonel by Mr. Varun Bansali, who also is the co-convener of this International J&K Studies and Analysis at INSA. But before we sign off, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very, very special guest in the panel right now, and I have to mention about her before we sign off. All of you are very special guests, but she happens to be extra special for me because she was my school teacher when I was studying in school. Because I witnessed Miss Sindhu Sharma. Ma'am, can you please unmute yourself and talk to us for a while? Put on your video, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Had a wonderful discussion. We got very good conclusions, and we will be carried forward in various forums. And I look forward to your cooperation from you. We'll keep discussing this issue of Jammu and Kashmir and we'll carry on discussing. And thank you very much for all your time, your views, and I'm very grateful and delighted. Thank you very much from International Institute of J&K Studies and Analysis. And Mr. Abdul, Dr. Abdul, I will be meeting at 10 o'clock on the European channel. We'll see you there again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, sir.